It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. The guys returned Sunday night, Monday morning. Had a lot of fun this week, co-hosting, I should say, filling in for Eric and Gary, and always enjoying speaking to you folks as well at 866-90 Red Eye. Exclusive from the Daily Mail. You ready? It's not real surprising. The Border Patrol has dumped buses full of migrants at an overwhelmed San Diego, California center, as the California city continues to struggle with 1,200 arrivals every single day. Now, remember what I said earlier. I don't believe that Joe Biden thinks that this is a problem. Joe Biden is trying to, and the Democrat Party, they are trying to import as many illegal aliens, or you want to call them, some people call them migrants, some people will call them illegal aliens. Remember, technically, if they come across our southern border and they're processed, I don't know if you are technically correct in calling them illegal aliens because Biden has, in effect, kind of made them legal. But I still consider them illegal aliens because they haven't been vetted. We have no idea who they are. And ultimately, you know, they'll dissolve into the fabric of our country. But every day, can you imagine that? 1,200 arrivals in San Diego every single day. They're given food, water, access to the internet, and help booking flights and bus tickets to other U.S. communities as border crisis continues to overwhelm these southern cities. I saw a story, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where the state of Massachusetts is saying that they are full. They can't possibly accept any more of these migrants. And you know what the thing is? Like the war in Israel, that has most certainly taken over the headlines, as it should. But at this point, can I be honest? I don't know what else there is to say about the migrant crisis that hasn't been said 1,000 times. Joe Biden is doing this. He is unapologetic about doing this. He doesn't care what you think. He doesn't care what America thinks. You know what I think is going on? I think what's going on is the Democrat Party, they know that Biden is not really their guy, right? They know that more than likely he's not going to be around for a second term. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But if ultimately, and there's new polling out here that I'm going to share with you in a second, but if the American people absolutely hate this migrant crisis and they're watching as the Biden administration continues to tell us that the border is secure when it's really not, I think the Democrat Party, what they're doing is they're just saying, you know what, we're going to let Biden take the political bullet. And so if the American people feel strongly enough, if the Democrat Party and people within that party, if they feel like enough is enough, then they'll, vote Joe Biden out. But I don't think they're going to. Well, I mean, they're not really, in effect, they don't really have a primary on the Democrat side. I mean, they didn't want Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they didn't want him to run against Joe Biden. He's now going to run as an independent. And so the party is doing everything that they can to protect Joe Biden. And so basically what they're trying to do, they know that this is unpopular with the American people. They know that the American people are angry at what they're seeing on the southern border. Well, all of these resources go to other parts of the world to protect other borders outside of America. We're just letting all of these people come in. But I know that you know that. And I know that you're frustrated as I am. And if you're a conservative, we've got all of this polling out there that shows, and that's basically the story. The Border Patrol dumping buses full of migrants right there at in San Diego centers for these migrants. And they're already overwhelmed. They're trying to deal with 1,200 arrivals a day. And now the question is, okay, so what does Gavin Newsom do? Think about this. So we know that California already is a train wreck, right? So you have California, and you've got Gavin Newsom, and he's watching Ron DeSantis, and he's watching Greg Abbott, the governor for the great state of Texas. And he's watching what they're doing, which is sending all of these migrants or illegal aliens to places like New York and Massachusetts and, these various sanctuary cities. Well, Gavin Newsom knows that the people in California, they're getting angry about this, just like in Chicago. The residents of Chicago, they're getting sick of this because their city is getting overrun with migrants. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I thank God every single day that I live in Nashville and that I live in a state that does not embrace these sanctuary city policies. I can't imagine what New York City is like right now. I can't imagine it. Because you've got all these migrants, you've got the crime, you've got the homeless crisis that is still going on. And so while here in America, we have all of these issues, Biden is focused on the world stage and not America's. I mean, earlier in the week, I played you a piece of audio. I can't even remember what day it was. But, Biden was talking about running again. And he talked about, imagine the possibilities of another 4 years, which should send shivers down your spine thinking about another 4 years of this. But Biden talked about, a united Europe and Vladimir Putin going down and, the Middle East is, unicorns and rainbows and everything is going great in the Middle East because suddenly Israel and Iran and Israel and, Jordan and all of these nations are suddenly all getting along thanks to Joe Biden. But he didn't say one word about America and about what Americans are dealing with. And, say, for example, the people in San Diego and what they're dealing with. Well, there's a reason why Donald Trump is doing so well in polling. And it's because Joe Biden has been train wrecking America. And when you look at some of the things that we're finding, this is the headline. Donald Trump leads Joe Biden in 5 pivotal swing states. Because I know that you've heard, and Gary and Eric talk about this all the time. I listen to them, by the way, every morning when I come into work for my morning show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. I like to, joke with them that they are part of my show prep, which they are. Guys are brilliant. And so, they'll tell you, well, yeah, you got to be cognizant when you see these national polls because, they're interesting, but they don't necessarily mean a whole heck of a lot because, it's the states where these national presidential elections are won or lost. It's in the states. So this headline, which, maybe the guys will talk about on Monday. Donald Trump leads Joe Biden in 5 pivotal swing states. More alarm bells for the White House as the president trails in areas that could decide the election. And Michigan is tied. I'm going to get into some of these numbers straight ahead because they are fascinating. Phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis. This is Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Minimal changes in USDA domestic dairy production forecast for both 2023 and 24.
2023 production we raised slightly, up just about 100 million pounds. Didn't make any change to our 2024 milk production forecast, but that 2023 increase is just reflecting a little bit of a bump up in milk per cow.
World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Mark Jekanowski says demand for butter is a driver behind dairy supply and demand estimates.
Fat basis imports unchanged for 2023, but up a bit for 2024. That is reflecting increased imports of butter. Similarly, our export forecasts on a fat basis were lowered. In both cases, that reflects lower U.S. exports of butter.
Most category prices are up minus cheese, translating in reduction in Class 3 milk prices. Class 4 prices, however, were adjusted up both for this year and next. Bottom line, higher all milk prices forecasted for both years. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. There is this headline here. Israel ramps up military activity along the Gaza border as invasion looms, with troops exchanging machine gun fire with Hamas. And this is the part that really interests me. They're talking about whether or not they should put together they're calling it a 40-mile demilitarized zone. So, between like North and South Korea, you've got the demilitarized zone. They're thinking about maybe doing that with Israel on the border with Gaza. And I've thought about this before. Why don't they do that? I mean, it seems to me, anyway, that would make sense. Of course, that doesn't solve the rocket problem. That doesn't solve the paraglider problem, because you know how this whole thing started a couple of weekends ago now, is the bad guys parachuted in. But it does still, I'm just kind of reading through this whole thing. Tens of thousands of Israeli soldiers and scores of tanks and armored vehicles are now positioned on the border, ready for ground assault on the Gaza Strip, where 203 hostages are being held captive by Hamas terrorists. So, number one is I keep seeing the number of hostages changing. That's number one. Number two, I agree with a couple of callers who listened to Joe Biden's his speech earlier, where the president, I don't even know, did he even mention the hostages? He must have actually mentioned the hostages, but I don't know if there is anything that the president really says specific about trying to get them back. But for President Biden, it does seem to me like the speech that he gave last night isn't really helping much. I did a lot of listening and looking at things online, and I've been watching social media. And basically, it's breaking out into two camps, right? So if you are pro-Biden, you thought that the president sounded strong, yet compassionate. And if you're anti-Biden, which I am, because I'm a Republican, I'm actually conservative, and the president, I think that he still sounded weak. 866-90-NATION is the phone number. Let's say hello to, this is Rob calling from Georgia on Red Eye Radio. Rob, how are you?
Hi, fine. Thanks for having me on. I was talking to the gentleman there coming on the show, and, back in the 90s, I worked for a federal agency, and I won't say what the agency was, but, and I was up off the coast of New England, and we were on patrol one night and come across a boat that was about to sink, had no lights, and we stopped it, and after we did a little investigation, we determined these were 25 Chinese illegals off the coast out there, and we called up the chain of command. We said, hey, what are we going to do? And they said, well, are they safe? And we said, well, they're about to sink, and, we've got a problem here. And we were told to escort them into the pier, and we said, well, you want us to call the local sheriff and have them picked up so you can come and take care of the situation? And they were like, no, just let them go. And we were like, well, we don't know who these guys are. Well, it's okay. Now, that was back in the mid-'90s, and I was personally involved in that. And I know these Border Patrol guys are doing everything they can do, but when you got your own federal government turning a blind eye to this, I mean, it actually gives me cold chills thinking about this because this has been going on for a long time. And
yeah, but you know what but Rob, what I'll say is the difference is that between the 90s and today is I think this is the first time where we've had a president and an administration that, to use your phrase, turned a blind eye. I mean, even Obama, and this may trigger some of you folks, but even Obama had an eye on the border. Certainly Donald Trump did. This is the first time, I believe, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, and I know that you folks will, where it's just been come one, come all. There was a lot of conversation when Trump came into office, where it was all about the messaging, where Donald Trump, he was very firm on the southern border and, build the wall. And the message from the Trump administration and during the campaign was, do not come. Do not come. You're not welcome. We're going to demagnetize America. We're going to build a wall. Basically very hostile to illegal immigration. And so what they found was that because of that messaging from Donald Trump on the campaign trail, and then when he came into office, because of that messaging, the flood started to slow down. People were like, no, we're not going to make this trip right now because we're just going to go ahead and get deported. Now, the devil is always in the details, but when you have a welcoming message, this is the point. When you have a welcoming message, like Joe Biden does, and when that welcoming message is, silence, as all these people are coming across the southern border, or when they say the border is secure when it's really not, that is a message. And the message is that if you want to come here, we will facilitate you coming into our country. We'll get you set up with whatever, great little benefits that you can get, and you won't be deported. And Donald Trump is the exact opposite. So go ahead. I'll give you the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, that was my point. I mean, that was even going on back then, and that was under the Clinton administration. And then, like you said, when Trump come in, he was putting the brakes on this. And what do all the lefties scream? They scream it's racist, right? Ukraine and Israel have a right to a border. That's what Biden says. Right. But not us. We can't secure our border. You see, it's ludicrous the way these idiots think.
Well, and, it is, and somehow Biden is the president of the United States. And let me ask you this, Rob. Do you think, and I've been struggling with what my prediction is for 2024, because I was really disappointed, and I know you were as well, with the red wave, which really wasn't much of a wave during the midterm elections of 2022. You got a prediction? You think that all of these bad decisions will finally catch up to the Democrats in 2024, or do you think that all of these bad decisions will lead to not a whole heck of a lot of consequences for Joe Biden and the Democrats?
I don't think Biden will be in there again. I don't think Trump will make it either, because when he was in there, the left did everything they did to make a firestorm of, the country is in chaos.
Right.
I don't know who would. I like DeSantis. But I think leading into this, we're going to see a whole lot of domestic problems because they're doing everything they can do to keep Trump out. And like you said, Biden, he's just not up for it. He's just physically, mentally not there.
You're right. I think, and I appreciate the call very much. I'm thinking about a Ron DeSantis, Gavin Newsom race. Doesn't mean that I don't want Trump. I do. But we'll have to see what happens with all of this. But could be DeSantis Newsom. Who knows?
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. You know, when you're a local host and you host nationally, you have to get used to the breaks that have to go at a certain time. And for me, sometimes they come at the exact wrong time when I'm trying to make a point. So I want to expand upon what I said heading into the last break when I said we very well could have a DeSantis-Gavin Newsom race heading into 2024. Now, the reason I said that, and my Nashville audience knows this, I know that I spend a lot of time saying a lot of good things about Donald Trump, is because I believe that he was a good president. Now, I'm not beholden to him. You know, if I think that he's going to be the right candidate after, you know, watching all of these folks into the primary, I see them during the primary and I think, okay, well, I'm listening to everyone and I'm listening to what everybody says. And if I like Donald Trump, I'll vote for him. If I like Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley's a no-go, but, you know, some of these other folks, then, yeah, I'm going to vote for that person. But the reason why I'm saying that is because when I went into the break, a guy found me, sent me a private message on Twitter, direct message, I guess, on Twitter, at Dan Mandis Show. And he's like, are you kidding? Ron DeSantis, blah, 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 right? And I'm just like, no, all I'm saying is that if something happens where Donald Trump ultimately, for whatever reason, decides not to run or he can't run, well, the reason why he wouldn't be able to run, who knows what it would be. But there's a lot of legal factors that are swirling around. So if Trump doesn't run, well, then you've got, Vivek Ramaswamy. You've got Ron DeSantis, who I really do like Ron DeSantis. I think he's made some mistakes, but you've also got Tim Scott and some other folks. But my point was that if it's not Biden, it's Newsom. And if it's not Trump, it very well could be DeSantis. That's all I'm saying. There could be any number of things that would prevent Donald Trump from running. But I guarantee you that when Joe Biden wakes up this morning, he's going to see this headline incredibly disturbing. Donald Trump leads Joe Biden in 5 pivotal swing states. Those states are Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Joe Biden does remain a leader in Nevada, which he also won during the last election. But it's a New Morning Consult Bloomberg Surveys poll, and they do show that Trump leading Biden in those states. It's very close. But this is yet another poll, and I realize that, you know, some of you folks, polls don't matter. I understand that. Polls don't matter because it's where we are now, and everybody's looking at what's going to happen in November of 2024, November of next year. You know, still more than a year away. But this, I believe it matters because it tells us where the American people are and what we're thinking. And every time these polls come out, Joe Biden is lower and lower. In Michigan, by the way, he is tied with Joe Biden. Donald Trump and Joe Biden tied at 44%. 8%, by the way, 8% of the electorate is undecided. But, you know, you look at these numbers, and I find the whole thing fascinating. See, I do find numbers and polls and all that, I do find them fascinating. Arizona, Donald Trump 47%, Joe Biden 43%. Georgia, 48% for Trump, Biden 43%. Michigan, tied at 44%. 8% undecided, by the way. Nevada, you've got Joe Biden 46% to Donald Trump 43%. North Carolina, Trump is at 47%, and Biden's at 43%. Pennsylvania, 46% to 45% favor Trump. And Wisconsin, you're talking about Donald Trump at 46% to 44%. Now, all of those are within the margin of error. But a lot of these, Donald Trump lost in 2020. And so what I'm seeing, and I know that you see this too, but what I'm seeing is a trend. You've got all of these different polls that are matching up and basically telling the same thing. I realize that some polls are contradictory. Like, for example, when you when you throw in RFK Jr., that is you're throwing like a spanner into the works, if you will. This is one of those things where, okay, you throw in RFK Jr., as I told you last night here on Red Eye Radio. RFK Jr., at least according to one of those polls, showed that he would pull more from Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, which I'm not, quite frankly, sure if I believe. But then I've been stunned before because I can't believe that any rational, clear-thinking, and clear-headed human being would actually vote for Joe Biden. But a lot of people still would, despite the fact that there has been train wreck after train wreck. And one of the things that they talk about, because, you go down all of the issues, right? You go down illegal immigration, you go down, the handling of the economy and all these. And he's upside down on literally every single issue. And one thing that Joe Biden has been trying to do, and I don't know why he's doing this. Well, I do know, because they're dumb. But they're trying to tout the greatness of Bidenomics. 51% of swing state voters said that they felt the national economy was better off during the Trump years. Now, I would like to know what those 49% are looking at when they believe that it's better under Biden, because it certainly is not. Going forward, they say 49% said they would trust Donald Trump with the economy, while 35% said the same thing about Joe Biden. Another swing state voters, among swing state voters who registered the economy was their number one issue, just 14% said Bidenomics is working. I'm going to say that again. Among swing state voters who registered as the economy as their number one issue, 14% only said Bidenomics is working. 65% say it's not. This was on CNBC.
You see time and again that voters aren't necessarily feeling that, including in the latest data, which you've mentioned, the Bloomberg Morning Consult poll. Yep. Biden is not getting good marks on the economy right now, and generally people don't seem to be thrilled with Bidenomics.
Yeah, they certainly don't. Look at that. 49% bad, 26% good in terms of how people feel about Bidenomics.
People feel badly about Bidenomics. You know why? Because people feel badly about their economy and the economy. Now, again, of course, this poll doesn't necessarily mean a whole heck of a lot, but right now Americans seem united in our disapproval of Joe Biden. And how do Americans feel Biden is handling the war between Israel and Hamas? So far, not great. 56% disapprove of the handling of the war with Joe Biden. Now, admittedly, it's early yet, 44% approve. This is from CBS as they talk about the poll. They did the poll.
Look, start off with this. Now, Biden's approval on handling this conflict is just a few ticks higher than his overall approval, and it's net negative. And part of this is the partisan splits that you might expect to see, but I want to point this out. It's a little bit less partisan than you might otherwise expect, because you've got a third of Democrats who disapprove of how Biden's handling this, and Republicans, okay, this is not high at 28% approval, but it is higher than the way they approve of him overall or on a lot of other issues. Why is that? Well, you used the word in the intro, mixed. And there's a bit of a mix on what exactly people want Joe Biden to do.
I think part of the problem, and again, it is so early in this conflict, but Biden has sounded weak. But consider the options, right? So that was on CBS, and he ended the question with, or he ended the statement with, what do people want done? I mean, consider the options. We're doing military and financial aid for Israel. We're sending in humanitarian aid into Gaza. We've got warships shooting down missiles headed for Israel. That's part of the news cycle this morning. And yes, he did indeed fly to Israel in a show of support. But for me, the part of the problem is that when Biden, for example, every time he speaks, he just sounds weak. So when you're a president and crap's going down and you need to sound like and portray yourself as a strong leader, and you sound tired, your voice is low, your voice is gravelly. And let's not forget that he didn't jump right out of the box and talk about what happened in Israel. He just didn't. And so it really made it seem like he was asleep at the wheel, not to mention the fact that, as I've been talking about this all night, it's not just what he's doing right now, but what he's been doing for 3 years with the allowing of Iran to get stronger financially by looking the other way regarding the sanctions and how Iran was skirting the sanctions. That allowed Iran to raise tens of billions of dollars to fund Hamas. We've been talking about that all week. But, for me, I just can't get over that funding of Iran or Hamas and so on and so forth. One of the things that they did not talk about in this piece is that funding. But, here's more on what Americans are saying that the president really should or maybe need to do.
There's 44% who say, okay, he's providing the right amount of support to Israel, but then the rest, well, should he provide more, right? Is he not providing enough? And a quarter who say he's providing too much. So which direction does that go? When you follow up with people and say, okay, if he's not providing enough, what should he do? They want him to criticize Hamas more, but then another half don't really have a firm answer. They say they just don't like his approach. And I think that it reflects a lot of the uncertainty in the situation.
Well, I think it also reflects on the uncertainty of Biden's brain. There's a lot of uncertainty there. We're going to send $100 million in aid to Gaza. Now, the question is, how do we... I'm sorry, I'm laughing in the intro of this because I know what's coming. So we're going to send $100 million in aid to Gaza. Egypt has finally said, okay, we're going to push this through. We'll see if Hamas takes it because, remember, the big controversy, the big conversation has been that every time there's aid that is sent to Gaza, it ends up in the hands of Hamas. And yet the aid continues to flow. And so, you have a lot of people, including, by the way, rightly so, Joe Biden, who, he's saying, and other people are saying, well, we've got all this aid, but we don't want it to go to Hamas. So the question is, how do we help the people of Gaza? How do we get, bread and milk and food and, basically, how do we help the people of Gaza without that aid going to Hamas? This was a conversation on, I think this was Fox News, and they're asking someone from the Biden State Department, listen to this.
How is the United States going to ensure that none of that ends up in the hands of Hamas?
Well, as you know, this was a primary focus of the president's diplomacy yesterday, both in Israel, where he met with the entire Israeli security establishment, but also in his phone conversations with regional leaders, including President al-Sisi of Egypt. Getting assistance into Gaza is a complicated undertaking. It involves essentially securing an understanding among Hamas fighters who control the checkpoint on the other side of the border, among the government of Israel and among the government of Egypt. And the agreement the president secured will enable these trucks to flow as soon as the roadway can be repaired. But the president was also quite clear that if this assistance goes in, it cannot be misappropriated, cannot be taken by Hamas fighters for their own purposes. And so we're going to be watching that very closely. It has to get to Palestinian civilians who need it.
It has to. But the question is, from what you just said, is the U.S. then essentially in a position where it has to take the word of Hamas that it will not be taken? I mean, what other guarantee can there be?
He's like,
We believe there is an understanding now among all of the players who control that crossing, the Rafah crossing in Egypt.
All right, so I think we can all rest assured there's an understanding between Biden and Hamas. I feel better. How about you? 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, appreciate you listening, and I always appreciate the opportunity to host here on Red Eye Radio. Great news. Gary and Eric, they return next Sunday night, Monday morning. My name is Dan Mandis. You can find out more about me on my Facebook page, all the socials. You can follow me on Twitter. I was joking earlier that I finally paid for Twitter. I actually forked out the credit card, $84 for Twitter. So even if it's like a sympathy follow, find me and follow me on Twitter if you would, at Dan Mandis Show. And I do host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. You can find out more about that program at 997WTN.com. We also, by the way, air that show on YouTube and Facebook, as well as the website and Twitter, 997WTN.com. So if you'd like to listen, please do. And I'll see you next time right here on Red Eye Radio. Have a great weekend.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.